There are missions you forget the moment they end, missions you carry in your memory but seldom revisit, and missions you are ordered never to speak of, not in reports, not in debriefings, not even in quiet conversations with men who were there with you. What I'm about to tell you belong to that last category. For years, I kept it buried under layers of classified silence, locked behind the kind of military warnings that came with clear consequences. But time does something to a man. It blurs the fear, softens the weight of secrecy, and eventually forces you to question why some truths were ever hidden in the first place. It began on a night without stars, when a civilian helicopter, not a military one, landed on the far edge of our base. No tail numbers. No markings. No transponder. Just a matte black shell that absorbed what little light the moon offered. I knew right then that whatever was happening wasn't coming through the usual channels. Our commanding officer called 6 of us into a briefing tent. No screens, no documents, no official packets. Just a single man we didn't recognize, dressed in civilian clothing but wearing the kind of posture that only a lifetime of government work could shape. He didn't give us his name. Didn't ask for ours. He simply said, "You've been selected for an off-record operation. You were not notified through normal communication pathways because this mission does not officially exist." We all looked at each other. Holt raised an eyebrow. Lang swallowed hard. Ellis shifted his weight. I just stood there, my arms crossed, watching the man's eyes. They didn't blink much. He laid out the basics: an abandoned compound about 30 miles outside the city, a place local fighters had supposedly used for smuggling and storage. But the objective wasn't drugs, weapons, or insurgent intel. The target was a group of individuals who had been operating in the shadows, Americans. Contractors, they claimed. Specialists. Men who were working under a different department. That's all he would call it. A different department. And apparently, this group had gone silent. Completely off-grid. No transmissions. No coordination. No sign of life for 72 hours. Your job, the stranger said, is to go in, assess the situation, recover any surviving personnel if possible, and retrieve whatever they were working on. If you cannot recover it, you destroy it. What exactly were they working on? I asked, because someone had to. He paused for a long time before saying, "All you need to know is that it is sensitive. Unrecoverable by local forces. Absolutely not allowed to fall into foreign hands." That was the first hint that this wasn't a clean mission. That whatever we were being asked to retrieve wasn't simple intelligence. You don't send an unmarked helicopter and a nameless handler for anything simple. As we geared up, we still had no file, no intelligence packet, no code name. Just coordinates. Unmarked vehicles, 2 matte black SUVs with no license plates, were waiting outside the tent. No escorts. No radio chatter. No command updates. Total silence. And yet, somehow, everything felt meticulously controlled. Holt whispered as we climbed into the back seat, "Mark, something's off." I replied, "I know." Because every instinct in my body agreed. Missions don't just appear out of thin air. Orders don't bypass command unless someone far above us wants deniability. And when you launch a recovery op for Americans who vanish inside an abandoned compound, it's never good news. As we drove into the dark desert with no headlights, no signals, and no clue what we were walking into, one truth settled heavy in my mind: whatever we were going to find in that compound, someone back home didn't want the rest of the world to ever know it existed. And that knowledge was the beginning of something I would carry for the rest of my life. We reached the compound just after 0300 hours. It sat alone in the desert, a concrete skeleton half swallowed by sand, its walls cracked and discolored, its roof sagging like it had been abandoned for a decade rather than months. But as we approached on foot, I noticed something strange: the gates were open. Not broken. Not forced. Just open, like someone had walked out and left them that way. Holt whispered, "Clear breach protocol?" I nodded. We split into 2 teams and pushed forward. The closer we got, the more wrong everything felt. There were tracks on the ground, boot prints, tire marks, signs of movement, but none of them made sense. Some went in circles. Some stopped abruptly. Some showed signs of struggle, but with no bodies. The kind of signs that make your stomach tighten. The interior of the compound was worse. Whoever those contractors were, they had been working with equipment I had never seen. Not advanced weaponry. Not communications tech. Something else: stacked metal cases with warning labels I didn't recognize, monitoring screens smashed on the floor, cables snaking across the ground like somebody left in a hurry. At the center of the main room sat a long metal table. On top of it were several black folders, soaked in spilled chemicals. Ellis approached first. "Sergeant, you need to see this." I came over and saw it, a photo stapled inside one of the folders. Not of a person. Not a map. Instead, it showed a large cylindrical object buried halfway in sand, with numbers spray-painted across its side. American numbers. Our system. Yet there was no record of anything like it ever being deployed in this region. Lang checked another folder. These aren't intel files, he said. They're logs. Activity logs. I scanned a page. It talked about readings, extraction, and relocation, but never explained what was being extracted. Another red flag. Contractors don't write like this. Scientists do. And these weren't soldiers, they were specialists. Civilians with clearance higher than ours. We spread out, room by room. No bodies. No wounded. No signs of escape. Just overturned chairs, spilled supplies, scattered documents, and a trail of blood that led into a locked storage room. We breached the door. Inside, we found 2 American contractors. Dead. No gunshot wounds. No blast injuries. No signs of chemical exposure. Just lifeless. Their faces looked frozen mid-expression, like something terrified them before they hit the ground. Holt knelt beside one and checked the pulse even though he knew better. They didn't fight, he said. No defensive wounds. Which means they didn't see it coming, I replied. Ellis pointed to the back of the room. Sergeant, more cases. We opened them carefully. Inside were several sealed containers labeled "Return to base immediately upon recovery." No item name. No department. Just that instruction. The cases were ice cold to the touch even though the room was warm, and the insulation was thicker than anything I'd seen used in the field. That told me one thing: whatever they contained was not supposed to be exposed to the environment. We tried the radio again. Nothing. Too much interference. The facility had thick reinforced walls, the kind meant to block signals. Suddenly, Lang called out from the far corridor. "You need to come here." We rushed over. He pointed his flashlight at a metal door half buried under sand, the hinges bent outward. Something had tried to force its way in, or out. "This wasn't on the map," Holt muttered. I tried the handle. Locked. Ellis inspected the hinges. "Torn from the inside," he said. "Look at the angle." That was when the lights went out. The entire compound dropped into darkness. And for the first time that night, I realized we weren't alone in that place. Whatever happened to those contractors, whatever came out of that reinforced room, was still somewhere inside those walls. And that changed everything. My men froze. Darkness can unsettle even the most battle-hardened soldier, but darkness inside a compromised structure, where men had already died without lifting a weapon, hits harder than the battlefield ever does. We switched to night vision. The compound shifted into a world of green silhouettes and ghosted outlines. Every hallway looked narrower. Every corridor felt alive. Holt whispered, "We need to get out of here." I shook my head. Not without the objective. The truth was, I didn't know what the objective even was. But the cold containers, the forced open door, and the dead civilians told me this wasn't a simple extraction. This was a containment mission disguised as a recovery op. The kind of mission where the people sent in weren't supposed to ask questions, just seal the problem and disappear. We moved deeper, following quiet echoes in the hallways. The sound wasn't footsteps. Not voices. Something else. Something mechanical. A faint clicking or tapping, like metal hitting concrete at intervals. As we advanced, I noticed scorch marks along the walls, controlled burns, like someone tried sterilizing parts of the compound. Then we found the last room. It was the only one with power still running, a single generator humming in the corner. Inside, the walls were covered in handwritten notes, chemical formulas, diagrams, and schedules. The contractors had been performing tests, and whatever they were testing wasn't from any military inventory. On a whiteboard, written in rushed handwriting, were the words, "Do not let it leave the facility." Ellis swallowed hard. "What's it?" he asked. None of us knew. Then Holt called out from across the room. "We have a survivor." We rushed to him. A contractor, barely conscious, slumped against the wall. His lips were cracked. His shirt soaked in sweat. No visible injuries, but he looked like he hadn't slept in days. I knelt beside him. "What happened here?" I asked. His voice shook. "We told them not to move it. Not to open the casing. It wasn't ready for transport." I asked what it was. He looked at me like he was deciding whether telling the truth was worth the risk. Then he said, "Not a weapon. Not a device. An energy source. Foreign. Stable until containment broke. When it ruptured, the pulse killed the others instantly." "Where is it now?" I asked. He pointed weakly toward the damaged door we found earlier. Holt's face tightened. "So whatever was in that case, came out." "It doesn't spread," the contractor whispered. "It attaches. Needs hosts. Drains them." That word, drains, sent a chill through the room. But he wasn't talking about possession or anything supernatural. He explained it clinically, like a scientist who had seen it firsthand. It pulls electrical discharge. Any power source. Any machinery. That's why your radios died. Why the lights failed. No energy around it survives. It doesn't know friend from foe. It just feeds. Realizing the danger, Holt whispered, so we're standing in a death trap. The contractor nodded weakly. His hand trembled as he pointed to the sealed cases we'd found. Backup containment. If you brought it back, seal it again. Or destroy it. Don't let them take it. Before he could say more, his breathing slowed. And then stopped. We stood in silence. My heart pounded as I looked around the room. The diagrams. The cold storage. The warnings. Someone had discovered a technology they weren't prepared to handle, something that consumed power, killed instantly, and escaped containment. And now, we were tasked with recovering it. Holt grabbed my shoulder. Mark, if we bring this back, you know damn well they'll keep experimenting. They'll put it somewhere bigger. Somewhere populated. And if we leave it here, I said, it might reach someone else. We were forced to choose between hiding a threat or delivering it into the hands of people who had already proved they couldn't control it. I made the decision that almost cost me my career. We gathered the sealed containers, the backup units designed to trap the energy source. We followed the contractor's notes. We activated the portable containment system using the last generator power. It worked. The temperature dropped. The cases vibrated slightly. And whatever was in that facility, whatever was lingering in dark corners, got pulled back inside. We sealed the cases. Loaded them into the SUV. And instead of delivering them to the coordinates the handler gave us, I sent one message over secure frequency: facility compromised. Objective neutralized. No recoverable materials. It was a lie. But a necessary one. We drove out before anyone arrived. The next day, the compound was bombed by our own aircraft, erased completely without explanation. The civilians we recovered were listed as killed in unrelated field work. The mission was never acknowledged. The handler disappeared. And those cases vanished into a warehouse I was never allowed to access again. For years I stayed silent. But the truth is simple, the mission wasn't about recovery. It was about covering up a mistake, a dangerous discovery made by a team not prepared for what they found. And if telling this truth puts me at risk now, so be it. What happened in that compound wasn't an act of nature, or war, or enemy forces. It was a government error buried under classified silence. And I won't carry their secrets anymore.